Well, in designing or doing a project for any client, one has to have a personal style, a personal taste, and personal technique in applying to come up with a study for a client's particular projects. Now, usually a client would choose you simply because you have not just the skills or the talent, but you have a personal taste or a personal style. And it is this personal taste or style that you are selling or that you are promoting. Architects or interior designers, for that matter, will not come up looking similar to other projects, or else they're just going to come up with a regular look. What they're looking for, a client is looking for, is uniqueness, and that uniqueness may come solely from you. It is a matter of building that kind of style, that kind of uniqueness that will set you apart from others. Now, how do you then come up with your own personal style? Personal style is usually brought about by upbringing to a certain extent, what you grew up with, what you were surrounded with, what you were exposed with as a child. This is where parents' roles play an important part because the parents can, one way or the other, enhance the ability of a person in creating their own personal identity surrounded by the things that they grew up with. In my own personal growth, the personal style that I found myself highly familiar with is the style of the 1950s, or what we call the mid-century modern. And it is through that style that I developed and that I was able to, one way or the other, enhance and promote. Through a particular style and a particular taste, you then create a signature. This signature is the one that transposes you from others whose signature differs from yours. In the end, there is a need to create an individuality. So this look, when it's seen by others, can one way or the other be translated as your look, your own personal taste with your own personal style. Equated, of course, with technique that probably is universal to all, with certain knowledges regarding laws, regarding utilities, that is again universal to all. But what sets you apart is the fact that you have a particular style, you have a particular taste, your sense of aesthetics is different from others. And this is what a client wants to find and what a client looks for. Well, the personal style that I normally follow, again, as I said, is mid-century. Mid-century is a period of style of architecture that one way or the other permeated from the 1950s all the way to the 1960s. It is basically designed using what we call Googie or what we call Sputnik style of architecture or interior design. Now, this particular type of taste is brought about by my upbringing from this particular period in time. Now, how do I promote it? How do I explore it? How do I expand it? It's a matter of looking, reading, experiencing, collecting, and scouting around furnitures from this period, looking at architecture from this period, studying the architecture from this period, copying, and then mimicking. It is a style that has a lot of natural materials involved in it, as well as splashes of color. Its architecture is very homey. Its architecture is very familiar to a good number of people. The interiors are very relaxing and at the same time very bold. It is something that allows a lot of light and shade to filter through, to penetrate through, and to create an ambiance that is very familiar and very comfortable. This is a personal style that I have practiced and that I try to employ in every project that I undertake, of course, if the client wants so. But I also endeavor in other styles that, to a certain extent, explores other stylistic movements. Again, one should not limit, but at the same time, one should also excel. And in this particular endeavor of mine, I tried to excel in a style that is familiar with me, familiar from my childhood up to this age. Well, the style that I incorporated this is a project that we're currently working on. It's a rest house that is in the proposal stages. At the moment, it is a rest house for an energy provider, and it's going to be built in Baguio. Outside of that, it is my own residence that I have one way or the other enhanced in this particular style. Once I inherited the property, I went through the process of trying to recreate an ambiance and a feeling that was synonymous to the feeling that I had when I was living here as a child. So to a certain extent, it is a familiar thing. It is a personal endeavor. It is a personal journey that allows me to discover this particular movement, not by chance, nor is it by accident, but it is something that is innately with me since the day I was born. How can you be different? That's always a question. Being different means being sincere to oneself. Being different means that you have your own experiences, and these experiences are the ones that you're promoting. Being different means that you have a different training, a training that may be more profound than others, a training that may be more personal than others. Being different means that you're looking at the competitor and coming up with something that is unique, because you wouldn't want to be similar to your competitor, because by doing so, you're just basically copying your competitor. Being different means that you are prepared to explore, prepared to discover, and prepared to exchange those ideas and translate those ideas into physical form. At the end of the day, we are looking for uniqueness here. There are, of course, a lot of projects that look similar. But if you go deeper into studying the architecture of that particular project, there should be a specific signature coming from the architect who designed that building. The last thing you would want to happen is that you're being compared with someone, because being compared in this case is not necessarily a compliment. It probably is you're a trying hard copycat, as the movie saying goes. But who wants to be a copycat? You have to come up with your own identity. Even if it is a genre that is practiced by everybody else, that signature should be yours and yours alone. Develop an identity that you could probably claim as your own identity. Now, the personal strategies that I could probably share with you is a very personal strategy. And this is basically being oneself, being confident, and being able to relate to your client. At the end of the day, you need to be able to communicate with your client, whoever that client is. And at the end of the day, you need to share with them who you are as a person. I think the success of any project boils down to having a very nice working relationship with the client, to the point that it does not anymore feel like work. Trying to understand where the client comes from, not necessarily laughing at their jokes, but being able to understand that they themselves are human beings who are in need of companionship and being in need of socializing. We need to be able to go deeper into the client's psyche, because at the end of the day, we are trying to understand their lifestyle, and they're trying to understand where they're coming from. And that's the reason why they employed us to begin with. By understanding what they want, by understanding what they need, and translating that want and need into the physical form. By able to do so, we then become successful. The problem with a lot of people, the problem with a lot of architects and students alike, is that they are afraid to understand what their clients are, simply because they're not the clients and they're not from that world. We have to go down or we have to go up to the level of the client. Sometimes we find it difficult and to be outside of our comfort zone. This involves a lot of socializing. This involves a lot of education. This involves a lot of communication. My advice for you all out there, my students, is basically for you to be able to learn how to communicate. At times, of course, we may not necessarily say the right things. At times, we may not be able to do the right things. But once we are sincere and the client sees our mistakes and our gullibilities, to a certain extent, they open up and they will accept us as someone that they could deal with. At the end of the day, again, as I said, the clients are looking for people who they can communicate with, who they can translate their ideas into form. If we are able to do that, then I think at the end of the day, you become a successful architect. Well, I was able to communicate with my client by first and foremost listening to what they want. The way I could share this with you is by trying to understand where they're coming from, by trying to understand what they want. By understanding means you are now able to profile them. Profiling is a very crucial thing in trying to build a working relationship with your client. At the end of the day, again, as I said, you need to be able to know what your client wants, who your client is, and where they're coming from. By asking questions, sometimes outside of your comfort zone, and by trying to understand the kind of lifestyle they live in, establishes an understanding, establishes a relationship between you and that client.